sparking song. Electrify my
So moving on, we're now delighted to be joined by Nick Bradley. Nick, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the podcast, and we're just going to jump straight into it. Dean, you've a question you can belt with, though.
Nick, have you any horses in Ireland anymore? I know you had Dr. Phoenix with Gordon Elliott.
Yeah, so we did. So I've known Gordon a while. We had a horse called Backstage years ago that ran in the Grand National when I was at Midland Park. So I got to know Gordon. Then we used to win point to points pretty much every weekend with Backstage. So I got to know Gordon well then, and our kind of our relationship went forward, and we had horses on the flat, and we had Dr. Phoenix, who we paid nothing for, and one day I was getting a bit excited we were going to beat under. So, but at the moment we haven't. But it's when the plan was at the May sales, the May National Hunt sales, kind of the end of year sales, when the kind of people are getting rid of horses and buying store horses, I was going to look at the form horses and look to buy one or two then. That was my plan, and yeah, probably still is my plan. Whether or not the sale goes ahead in May, but it'll go ahead at some point.
Yeah, so that's just one for our listeners to keep an eye out for in future. Then, any of your horses in Ireland?
Yeah. Gordon. You know, I've known Gordon a long time, and he'd be my go-to trainer in Ireland.
Yeah, perfect.
And Nick, how are you and your daughter now? Obviously recovering from the coronavirus.
Yeah, so we were both grand. We kind of 10-12 days afterwards we were pretty much symptom free, and it kind of eased itself up towards the end. Neither of us needed to go in hospital. At no point did I think, I need to phone the doctor here. The shortness of breath thing was kind of, it took me from 100 down to kind of 75, 80 at its worst. So yeah, no, we're both good. We've been sat in the sun playing in the garden today, and everything's good.
That's good to hear. And you've obviously probably struggled to get supplies and stuff into the house then.
So I obviously saw it coming. We went on lockdown 10 days before kind of England, UK went on lockdown. So I saw it coming, and we put a big order in then, and then we actually ran out, running low on food about 10 days ago. And I was kind of looking at the data and the stats and thinking, what should we do here? There potentially could be a bit of food shortage. So actually, I spent half an hour today unpacking a load of food we've bought from catering companies. I've kind of stayed clear of supermarkets, see it as a potential way of bringing the virus back into the house. So I stayed clear of supermarkets, and we're not far from Port of Grimsby. I ordered a load of fish the other day, and somebody kind of came and dropped it off. And we're good for food at the moment. We're probably good for the next month or so. So yeah, things we're sorted on that front.
Well, that's good to hear. And can you just walk us through how you set up the racing club? What made you set up that club? Or
so around about 10 years ago, so I was gambling, I was punting, I was doing things like draw biases, ground biases, basically betting policies and patterns based on what I was seeing from watching videos. And it got to a stage where I thought, I'd like to show people, because I was obviously making a good income from it. I was showing people what I could do in terms of buying and selecting the horses. It's a bit like the Dixon boys have done recently, the time form ads. So I went to sales, and I bought a horse with Tim Pale in Midland Park Racing. And the first horse we bought was a horse called Exceptional R2. I bought with Dandy Nichols, and he won the Beverley Bullet, which is held at the end of August, and was 6-1 favourite for the Air Gold Cup. And we actually sold him 2 days before the Air Gold Cup off to Hong Kong. So that was the first horse we got involved with, and then I kind of carried on buying horses from Midland Park Racing, and each time I bought horses, I took a significant share myself, because I obviously believed in the horse. And then 4 or 5 years ago, I went and did my own thing. Nick Bradley Racing was born, and yeah, we had a great start, and hopefully, things have continued well so far, and hopefully the same happens this year.
Yeah, with a bit of luck anyway, when it starts to come back and racing resumes to normal, and obviously it'll be behind closed doors to start with, and maybe there mightn't be crowds this side this year anyway, but it's tough to know,
Yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, it is. It is tough to know. It just depend. A lot of it's going to depend on what the government, choose to do. They're gonna set the rules, and we'll obviously follow their direction. But yeah, as you say, initially it's likely to be behind closed doors, which would be a step forward. A lot of the owners would rather see that than no racing. So it's something I'd be keen to do.
Yeah, 100%. And like there might be, I know Dundalk were letting I think one owner per horse in, so I'd say
Right.
it'll go something like that.
Yeah, that would make sense. I mean, it wouldn't be ideal for syndicates. There was a talk about redoing regional racing here, where the jockeys and the staff on the race course would all be stationed in the hotels, and they'd stay there. And we'd have racing at Newcastle for 7 days on a trot, and people would take the horses to the race course, and somebody else would take the horse off the box, and it'd be a case of a bit like what's going on in the breeding season now, where if you've got at the moment we're still covering mares, and we literally drive the mare to the stud farm, and then our driver doesn't even open a window. They stay in the horse box. The the mare's covered and put back on the box, and off you go again. So yeah, something like that would work initially. But I think if people are aware of the situation now, and if people observe social distancing, then we might be able to get racing some point this summer.
Hopefully, well, that's best case scenario anyway. And I can't see it coming any sooner than maybe late July.
Yeah, I mean we're speculating out. We don't know. I've been following all the graphs from Italy, Spain, obviously China originally, and what's happening in China. The data that was released, suggested it wasn't going to be too much of an issue. But then the Italy data, when that started, really rocking up, it was scary stuff. I think that Italy would be in a position to come out of lockdown in around about 3 weeks for Italy, and we're a couple of weeks behind them. So I would like to think that last week in May, maybe second to last week in May, would certainly be talking about coming out of lockdown and putting plans in place.
Yeah, and Italy's figures, they have probably an older population than most of the countries in Europe, so that wouldn't help them that way fatality wise. Like,
Yeah, they certainly have got an older population, but our figures are bang on target with what's happening in Italy at the moment. So if we're saying that everybody in Italy is dying because they're an older generation, then why is the same thing happening over here? That would be my argument. My theory was that family sizes have a lot to play in it, and that would be the difference with China and Italy. Why there's such a difference. China, I believe, at the time people were only allowed one child per family. So when they locked the doors and went on lockdown, there was only 3 people in the house. So only 3 possible people could bring it into the house. Whereas you're seeing a lot of the Muslim families over here and the larger families in Italy, there's sometimes double figures in a house. So if you've got that many people in the house and you go into lockdown, and 1 person or 2 people bring it into the house, if you're on lockdown for a prolonged period of time, you would imagine that the virus is going to be passed from one to another in the same way that I caught it off my daughter. My partner didn't catch it off my daughter. She was out working on the farm during the day, and I was running home school. So I had my daughter sat with me reading each day and doing maths and English work, and I believe that's how I caught it. So yeah, I think family sizes had a big part to play in terms of how it was being passed from person to person. Certainly after lockdown, anyway.
and do you think maybe the schools over there shut down a bit too late? I know Ireland here, we shut schools down, I think 2 weeks before you did.
In the UK, yeah. If it came down, if it was my decision, then yeah, I would. If you think about the number, the interaction that we have during the day, I mean, I maybe see 2 or 3 people a day. We live in a farm in a small village. Obviously, people in London, it's different. But a school child would interact with many children during the day. Even if it's a case of sitting in an assembly, sitting in classroom, and obviously children aren't as affected as much as the older generation or even adults. And it's shown up in the results that they carry less symptoms and certainly the death rate, it's negligible if any. So it's obviously harder to detect which children have got it, which children haven't got it. As I say, it took me probably it took my daughter 12 days to show any symptoms, and even then it was just a cough. And she was telling me that the symptoms she had, she was telling me she had them 2 days after I'd had them, so I knew it was kind of the same. We both had the same virus, if you like. Neither of us have been tested, but it was something that I've never experienced before. So putting two together, we came up with the coronavirus.
Yeah, well, it's good to hear that you're right the other side of it now.
Yeah, I'm sure lots of people have had it, and it wasn't labelled that, and they've had it and got through it, and so yeah, all good.
Yeah, and I think a lot more people are paranoid as well, because I know myself, I got the cold during it, so I instantly assumed nearly that I had it. But obviously, I'd say a lot of people have the same mindset as that if you catch a cold, like, you're instantly going to think, oh, I have the coronavirus. I need to self-isolate.
Yeah, I can understand that. My kind of, when my symptoms were the worst, my worst hour in the day was the hour after I watched the news. And it was like kind of, day in, day out, it was the same hour where I was, and it was probably an element of fear and paranoia and, it came into play. It kind of, unsettled me. So yeah, I went from watching the news kind of 3 or 4 hours a day to not watching it all, or maybe an hour a day now. So yeah, in terms of managing your mental state, it's part of the puzzle.
Yeah, it really is. Martin, you've been very quiet during this interview.
Yeah, happy to listen to what Nick's got to say. Hi, Nick. Just I guess a more general question on the flat racing season. Do you think next season we'll see more horses stay in training than we might otherwise do, given maybe the shortness of the season this year?
So you think 2-year-olds now for 3-year-olds next year?
So more the 3-year-olds this year. Will we see them next year? Will we see more of them next year than perhaps we might do?
It's really hard to know because we don't know what the program's going to look like, and we don't know how long it's going to go on for. I would certainly envisage that people would be running their horses on the all-weather November, December time. I would think that would definitely happen. I mean, in recent years, we've seen like John Gosden have horses bred in the purple running at Wolverhampton in December, making the debut then, and that's the only reason because they've not. That's been their time because they've got that's such a big operation. And they've can only have so many horses in the main yard at any one point. I can certainly see that up until Christmas time, people are going to be still racing their horses, and if they've had 4 or 5 runs in the year and they generally have 8 or 9, 10, then I can see it going on and on. Yeah. In terms of horses that you select to keep in training, I think it'd come down to individual. For example, when I make my decision regarding my fillies, a lot of it's based around the end of the end of the racing season, start of the breeding season. Those dates aren't going to change. So in terms of the fillies, I would imagine a lot are going to retire end of the 3-year-old season as per the norm, rather than go on for 4 or 5 months, because it wouldn't make much sense for a filly. But in terms of a colt or a gelding, then yeah, potentially could happen.
And just you touched on the breeding as well there. Do you think breeding will be affected this year, or do you think that's just carried on as normal and therefore there shouldn't be too much impact?
So in terms of covering mares and vets, everything is carried on to normal. The vets were told to do minimal work for a 2 to 3 week period, and they weren't allowed to vet horses for sales and things like that. For private sales, they were just doing the breeding work. So in terms of our farms, it's carried on completely as normal. The only difference is, I say, when a mare goes to be covered, the protocol at the stud farm is slightly different. We did have a period where we thought Ireland could close the borders, so I actually arranged for several of my mares to go over to Ireland that were going to be covered in Ireland, to go to Ireland to be full in Ireland, then be covered. But Ireland never closed the borders, and I don't think that's going to happen now. I think kind of, certainly in the UK, we're over the peak. And Ireland, you've managed it great so far. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Yeah, Dean lives on the border in Donegal or Derry.
Yeah, last weekend, now with it being Easter weekend, we had manned checkpoints 24 hours a day by the Gardaí, and they were joined by the PSNI, the police service here. And they were doing a very good job. Like, they came in for a bit of criticism from people, but at the end of the day, I just don't think those people were looking to go to their holiday homes, and are come down for diesel. Them's non-essential trips. And I actually had a conversation with one of the Gardaí last Friday, and I was saying to him, I was like, "Look, have you been getting much abuse from people, or have people been giving out these?" He says 90% of them aren't. It was all, but you all get somebody that only wants to go down 500 yards to the shop. It was all they could tell us they're going to the shop. He says, but they could be going anywhere. It was also we have to tighten up on it. And now we only have a small village here, and we would have 2 Gardaí placed in it all year round. And these people that were drafted in for the borders all around Donegal and Derry were drafted in from down south of Ireland, so as that nobody knew them, so they couldn't say, they wouldn't know any of the local people.
Yeah.
So it would be easier for them to turn around and say, look, you can't get in, and that's just that, plain and simple. I seen them a couple of days turning 3, 4, 5 cars away in a row because people obviously hadn't got the right to be crossing over there.
Yeah. I think you guys have done have taken it more seriously on that front. I mean, I've not seen any cars. I mean, we've got 2 farms 20 miles apart, and it's like a village roads. But I've not seen any police cars on the roads. But I've done limited travel. But I know that there's plenty of people who are still walking to the shop every day to collect a paper, and going town for a pint of milk every day. And we've got a recycling centre in our village, and they were queuing because everybody's gone on lockdown. Everybody's thought, right, what am I going to do? They've tidied the house up. They've got lovely weather outside, so they started tidying the garden up. So everybody's tidied the garden up, got all this garden rubbish, and gone down to the garden waste centre. So there's more social interaction at the tip now than there is anywhere in the village, which kind of, I can see why they're doing it, but in terms of protecting yourself against the virus, it wouldn't be the best advice in the world, would it?
No, I think a lot of people don't realize the seriousness of it. As you say, like even in our local village, it's about a mile long. Like 4 housing estates in it. You've 4 or 5 shops and that. But you still see, as you say, people heading down for their paper or their milk, and now, like, you could be there and you could be having one person making 4 or 5 trips, just because that's what they're used to doing. But
Exactly,
they think that I'm only going in for 5 minutes. I'll not be in there more than 5 minutes. I'll not catch it. But it's hard for people. I think it's hard for people to get through. And whenever everybody's doing such a great job, and the hospitals and the care homes and everything, that side of it is really letting them down, because they're working 12-hour shifts. Some of them probably working 7 or 14 days in a row without a day off. Like, I just think people should take a wee bit more care in it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a case of there's a percentage of the population who are ignorant and ignorant to the ability to change their daily routine. They will not change what they did yesterday, last week, last year, and they're just going to carry on doing that. And they say, well, it's my life, I can do what I want. But what they don't factor in is the fact that if they do need medical attention, they're putting somebody else's life in danger. And if they do catch the virus and they bring it home or see any family members, they're putting their lives in danger. There's people over here who've died having been on lockdown and got it, walked into the supermarket, and died in their own home having caught it in the supermarket.
Yeah, it's mad. Like, It's mad that people don't or can't. Not even that they don't, that they can't.
Yeah.
Self-isolate and just even if you don't have it, like just to protect yourself more than anything else.
Exactly. We're only going to do it for a month. It's not like, it's not like we're going to World War. It's not like we're sending people to the trenches. It's a case of stay in for a month. It's
and the sooner everybody listens to it, the sooner life gets back to normal. That's the thing.
Exactly. Yeah. There's a country like Greece and New Zealand. They went on lockdown, similar time to you guys did, and they've had minimal deaths. I think New Zealand have had 4. Greece have had 100, and Greece, being very hard, big country, big population, and they've just done an amazing job at what they've done because they've been disciplined and they've listened to their government, and they've just executed it really, really well. It's managing a virus isn't hard, but it is a mathematical problem, and unfortunately, certainly in the UK and in America and several other places, the guys who've been managing it aren't mathematically minded, unfortunately, and the advice they've been given hasn't been good advice.
Yeah.
It's very much the same here as well, Nick. I'm down in Devon, and we've got people sneaking in on B roads with the light switched off at 3 o'clock in the morning to try and avoid the police checks. And there's just totally no reason to be doing it. You should just be staying at home. People coming from London to go fishing in Torquay. I mean, it's just bonkers.
Absolutely. I had a member, and I said, "How are you getting on?" He said, "Oh, I'm just going to go and see my daughter tomorrow." This was say, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, and I talked to him. I said, "Look, you shouldn't be doing this." And I got through to him, and then I said, "Oh, how's your pal getting on?" He said, "Oh, he's just playing golf at the minute." And this was kind of March 25th, and I was like, "What the hell?" And he said, "He will not change. Will not change what he's done." Anyway, obviously, 2 weeks later, the lad caught the virus. We've got people coming down our road, throwing their rubbish on the side of the road because the tip's shut or because they've got that much rubbish, and that's the mentality of the people. Just to, their rubbish is give somebody else's problem, and sometimes it makes you embarrassed to be English, but embarrassed to live where you live.
And unfortunately, the bad ones will never change, and the good ones will stay indoors. And 90% of the people are staying indoors. Unfortunately, there's 10% that ruin it for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're in somewhere like London, the epicenters of where the virus is, then you may pay the penalty. But in most situations, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, they will never kind of learn from their error. They will never be be protested. And but it's always going to be like that in life, isn't it? There's always going to be a cross section. I said to a pal of mine who worked for me when we were betting, I said, the IQ of the country will probably rise as a result of coronavirus. Because it'll either educate or it'll the ignorant and the arrogant will suffer.
I've got another question that's non-COVID related.
Go for it.
Around syndicates, given the not just yourselves, but there's obviously lots of syndicates around the country where people have paid into horses that are clearly not running and what have you. The ones that are paying on a yearly basis, not so much where they're paying up front and then just paying monthly till the horse is sold or is retired. Do you think there's going to be a drop in income into those syndicates given what's happened recently, or do you think the type of person that invests will just carry on investing anyway?
I can only speak from my own experience. So I tend to buy most of my horses September, October, and then I start selling the shares literally from the fall of the hammer. And normally I aim to have all my shares sold at the end of March. I found that share sales were strong all the way through, and I actually got most of my shares sold before any of this happened. I've only got shares in the odd horse left. From my own point of view, I'm going to try and my budget when I work out my costing. I work on training costs, vets costs, admin, going racing costs, jockey fees, or everything. So what I'm going to try and do is work out what I would have spent on jockeys' fees and going racing costs in April and May, and somehow give that back or put it on people's accounts so they've got it in credit come the end of the year. And what we find could happen is that the racing window, instead of it being I don't know, March the 28th to October 28th, if everything moves back 2 months or is concentrated or whatever, it could be that we get the same amount of racing just in a different time period. So yeah, it's a tricky. Nobody knows how it's going to play out, but right now I'm going to do my best to look after my guys, who invest with me, and hopefully everybody else will do the same.
That's a great view to take, actually, and as long as again, it's one of these things where if everybody works together, then everybody comes out of it okay. The trouble is where you get people trying to take advantage of the situation, it becomes a difficult situation.
Exactly.
Nick, just for any of our listeners left there, I'm on your website at the minute. You have presidential there. There's only 2.5% remaining in him, and Grandy 2.5% remaining in him as well, and Zerum is 2.5 as well.
Yeah.
And the unraced 2-year-old has 47.5. So for any of our listeners listening in to the podcast, they can check next page out. And I've just been checking them out myself there. The prices are very, very reasonable for the 3-year-olds and older, and for an unraced 2-year-old, for the breeding that's there, the prices are very, very, very reasonable. I've been involved in I was involved in a syndicate last year myself. We had one horse released out and we had good fun, but before that I was involved in a racing club, and we had great fun. We had 3 horses in the racing club, and it was with a big trainer, and one of the horses won twice within, I think, 2 weeks, and after that things just kind of took a back step, and I think we went 4, 5, maybe 6 months without a horse on the track, and that's being involved in that kind of put me off a wee bit. But reading about your racing club and reading all the rest of the owners' comments and all testimonials on your page, you seem to run a very, very good ship.
I try. So I think the best education anybody can have is gambling, because when you're a gambler, if you don't learn from your mistakes, you will go skint, and you'll go skint pretty quick. And that I attribute gambling to my makeup, my personality. So what I try and do is, gambling, you have to learn. If you don't learn, you're gonna go nowhere. So I try and do that in everything that I do. I see every day as a lesson. So I listen to people. I try and understand, their emotions that are going through. I try and explain everything. I try and explain the positives and the negatives. Your experience, horse to win twice in a year is a positive experience. That's above average. But the racing game, you can go long periods of time without the horses winning. I mean, if you look at something like Richie, he probably had 6 horses line up at the festival. I don't know how many winners. Say he had 2 winners, but he probably had 60 horses, 40 horses in training, and half of them would be injured, and some have been moderate, etc., etc. So I try and explain it as best I can. And when I go and buy a horse, when that hammer goes down, I'm not buying for anybody other than myself, because I'm going to write the check, and then I offer the shares up, and hopefully, if I bought well, people want to get involved and support me. So I try and do it like that. I don't use agents or anything like that. I talk to trainers, and I've kind of I've learned a lot over the last 10, 15 years that I've been involved. And yeah, I just try and make everything as clear as possible and as transparent as possible, and do as good a job as I can do.
Yeah, that's all really anybody getting involved would really ask, because I see there you keep everybody well up to date and well informed and everything. That's key whenever you run a racing club too, I suppose, isn't it? So the day-to-day running is probably a lot of work in it for you. How many horses would you have?
So we've got 35, 40 horses in training. And of those horses, I tell the guys they're going to get at least one email every month. That's bare minimum. And that would happen when a horse is out of training on a walker, for example. There's not a lot to report. But right now, I'm trying to do an update every week. And some trainers are great. They'll send you videos of your horse every week. And if I get a train on a video on a Tuesday, it'll go out to owners on a Tuesday, on perhaps a Wednesday, depending on timings. I try and pass everything on. So Roger Charlton, for example, he sends me the videos of the horses walking in from exercise every day, on most days, and I send them straight on to the guys. And I try and, any opinions that are passed on to me, I pass on to the owners, and then I kind of put the trainer's opinions in context. So, for example, if I've worked with a trainer for 10 years and I know that they're always right, I'll say, this will be bang on because, this trainer's a great judge. And just try and put it in context and add my own slant on everything and my own experiences. So, yeah, in terms of...
I'll go ahead.
Yeah, so I work on emails. I probably... There'll be one day a week where I'll send out 50 to 100 emails, and then after that I'll send out. We do a newsletter every week, and when we go and have open days, and open days, I try and explain what's gone through my head in terms of when I'm placing a horse or buying a horse or any decision, just so that people can understand and see where I'm coming from.
Yeah. For just going back to the 2-year-old again, Have you seen the filly working with that unraced 2-year-old with Mark Johnson? Have you seen her working or anything?
So that filly, I bought three 2-year-old fillies to go to Mark this year. I bought a Lop de Vega filly that was Sea of Heartbreak. I bought a Twilight Sun filly that was sister to a good horse that Mark trained last year. His name escapes me. And the Glen Eagles filly. They all went up to Mark's. Roundabout, I might be a week out here, roundabout, say, February the 1st, broken in, they went up there. Whenever a horse goes to Max, they always go on a round gallop for the first 4 weeks. It's literally a furlong round, and they start off by walking around, and then they go to trotting, and then they go to hacking. That's his routine that he does with every horse. So for those 3 horses, for the month of February, that's what they were doing. And then from that, they move on to the main gallop, where they would just, the first couple of weeks they would hack up and then they'd work towards a cantering on their own and then cantering in pairs. The most forward of my 3 fillies I've sent up right now is the Lop de Vega filly, and I got a video back end of last week of her going up in a pair with another filly. The Glen Eagles filly and the Twilight Sun filly slightly behind her. So I've seen her cantering, but she won't do any fast work until middle of May at the earliest. I wouldn't have thought. Maybe early May. The Lop de Vega filly might be doing fast work in 2 weeks, but the other 2 fillies will be behind her. So in terms of assessing her ability, I'd be completely in the dark, as would Mark and Charlie right now. But in a month's time it might be different.
Yeah.
And Nick, just talking about people buying shares into your club, would you find there's a spike come round a festival and people just saying, "Oh, I'd love to get into a bit of a racing club or something"?
The Cheltenham Festival.
You'd find that there's a lot more people coming in and buying shares.
Yeah, you said festival. Were you meaning Cheltenham Festival?
Oh, just any festival in general.
No. So what I tend to notice is when I go to the sales, people know when the sales are on. I do promote the fact that I'm going to sales, but people know. And when the hammer goes down, I could literally have a phone call 30 seconds after the hammer's gone down saying, "I'll take 10% in that filly. I'll take 5% in that call," whatever. I tend to see that the spikes when people buy shares tend to be when I buy the horse, when I publish the videos, when I do open days, or when there is a particularly upbeat update on the horse. Majority of my horses would certainly this year sold out very, very soon. So there'd be horses like the lot of Vega filly I bought with Matt Johnson. I bought it on the Monday of Goff's Orby sale, and I got home on the Thursday evening, and the horse had sold out before I even got home. So I don't see that in terms of only because when those things happen, I tend to be sold out with horses. I only have the odd one or two, so it's not. I don't see it, but I can understand people being more in thinking that way after big racing festivals, definitely.
If you had to give us one horse to follow, Nick, for the year, whenever we do get back up and running, is there anything that maybe that stands out for you, or that you think might progress well towards the end of the year or whatever?
Just going to get my list of horses up in front of me. I've got a horse that won at Newcastle it was back in the January, I believe, called Clary Blue, in training with Martin Mead. It's a 3-year-old now. It's by Zebedee. It was brother to a horse that Joseph O'Brien had last year called Don Carlos. Don Carlos finished third in the Windsor Castle, but it was kind of a third from the clouds. This horse is by Zebedee. I started him off at Newmarket in what was billed at the end of the year as the best maiden of the year. It was the maiden that Visinari produced the amazing time figure. I had the horse, so this horse was third that day. He was on the wing all the whole way, and he then went to York, finished second in the maiden, and then won at Newcastle in February. I had him down as going for the Reg Griffin, which is a 100 grand handicap at York in the middle of summer. I thought we'd go there and win that. He's rated mid-80s. He's a lot better than that. He'd be one I'd be telling people to put in the notebooks. You mentioned a horse earlier called Presidential. He's a horse who I thought would win at the back end of last year at Doncaster in the Racing Post Trophy meeting. It wasn't designed that way, but he was just beginning to come into form. He was going to get 7 furlongs on soft ground, big field, and a track which suits hold-up horses. I thought he'd win that day. He's certainly on a mark that he'll be winning races from. So yeah, there's a couple.
Good stuff. And Presidential still has 2.5% left, as I mentioned. So anybody listening on that wants to get involved, hit Nick up and he'll sort of look after you.
He will indeed.
And
Just
Nick,
one more from me, Nick.
Go for it.
Outside the classics, is there a race that you'd love to win? Is there like a target that you say to yourself, that's the race I'd like to win?
When I was growing up, the race that pulled me into the horse racing game was Grand National, and I wanted to win that. And we had a horse called Backstage that finished. He looked like he was going to win it one year, and he went around the inside the whole way. And a horse called My Will was running the race, a horse trained by Paul Nicholls, and it had already lost its rider, and then it fell again, riderless, and it brought down Backstage. That I wanted to win that race, and then that kind of soured me a little bit. And then I had a horse called Junior, who won at Royal Ascot, won at Cheltenham. He was favourite for the Grand National one year. He fell at the second fence. He smashed through the first, smashed through the second, fell on the second. He always was really low at his fences. The Grand National was a race that I always wanted to win. In terms of the flat, I'd love, because we've got 30, 40 brood mares now. I'd love to have a stallion good enough to win a Group 1. I was involved with G-Force. I bought him for very little, and we won the Betford Sprint Cup, the Group 1 at the end of the year at Haydock. I'd love to, a race like that maybe, or maybe something at the long shot meeting, the art meeting, something like that. Yeah. Yorkshire track that I always want to win, and I probably had a dozen seconds since I last won a race at York. So that's a place I'm always trying to win at, but it's incredibly, incredibly hard.
Excellent.
Martin, you just stole my question, though. I was literally just about to ask it. Nick, that's really it. I think we've covered everything.
No problem. It was a pleasure. Good talking to you.
Yeah,
So,
and it's been really eye-opening having you on, and I thank you for joining us. And if you are interested in joining Nick's Racing Club, there'll be a link to his website in the description. Just go and click that, and you'll be directed straight to his website. And yeah, we hope you enjoyed this podcast, and don't forget to like and click the subscribe button so you never miss a podcast. And we'd just like to thank all our guests once more.
yeah, thanks very much, guys.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Nick. Thanks for your time. Fantastic.
Cheers, guys.
Without sparking song. Electrify my heart.